Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about how Drupal classifies and manages users and user roles, and particularly what is a user role. Um, so let's start by clicking on the People menu up here, because what I want to do here is I want to talk to you a little bit about the people who are using your website. Now, um, obviously, when you think about who's going to be using your website, you might be thinking, okay, like my site visitors. But in this case, what I'm talking about are the people who are actually working on the administration of your website. And in this case, I've got exactly one user who is registered in this Drupal installation right here. My username is RoboBunnyAttack, and that's me. So that's me. I am a registered user on this site, and you need to have at least one user, and that person would be the administrator, and they're the person who gets to log in and change all the settings on the site and design the site and add content, etc., etc. At minimum, you need that one administrator user. But you're not limited to that. The whole purpose, I think, of a content management system is to allow multiple people to contribute to the development and the maintenance of a website, and they can contribute in different ways. For example, if you were building some sort of a site that was maybe sort of a magazine style, a site where you had articles about various topics, you would certainly have the administrator and the people who would be in charge of building the site and maintaining it and doing all that technical stuff. But you would also have writers and editors and people who are contributors, people who would be adding the actual articles to your site. At least that's the way most modern sites work. You wouldn't necessarily, have everybody email their articles to you and you just like copy it on here. You would have your users actually log into a site like this and be able to contribute the work that they had done, say, for example, an article or something to that effect. Now, if that's the case, if you've got multiple people logging into your site and having some sort of permission to publish on your site, and these are people you've chosen to do this, obviously you want to control what types of things they can do on your site. For example, if you've got a writer who's like a concert reviewer and their job is only to go to concerts and do reviews of concerts and publish those on your website, you don't necessarily want them to have access to all the administrative backend. In other words, you don't want that concert reviewer to suddenly be able to change the color of your site or change the structure of your site. You just want them to have access to a specific set of tools within your website. And so that's what roles are all about. You can actually, for every user who's going to log into the back end of your site and be able to do stuff on there, you're going to decide what they can and can't do. And roles in Drupal let you set specific permissions for what it is that they can do, for what it is that, you could, for example, have a contributor role where all they can do is post stuff, post articles, but they're not allowed to go in and change the appearance or do things like that. And you can control this at a very, very fine-grained level, and that's really handy. There are actually several default user roles on a fresh Drupal installation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually switch over to the Permissions tab over here to show you, kind of give you an example of the different things that different roles can do. We'll be back on this page in a future screencast where I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about this actual permissions page. But here you can see that we actually have 3 different roles identified here: anonymous user, authenticated user, and administrator. And if you wanted to add more roles, you'll see over here on the upper right hand side, there's a button here we can click called roles. And this is where you can actually add more roles to your site. Now, I mentioned that there are 3 default user roles on a fresh Drupal installation. This is what they are: the anonymous user. And the anonymous user is just basically what Drupal considers anyone who's anonymous, who's just visited your website, they've just surfed on over to your website, and they're not logged in. Okay, they don't have a user account and they haven't actually logged into your site. And I know it's weird to consider that a role, but technically Drupal has to, have a category for anyone who's not logged into your site, and so Drupal just calls those anonymous users. So technically speaking, that is a user role. Second, we've got authenticated user, okay, and I'll come back to that in a second just to explain what that is. And finally, we've got administrator, and you're the administrator, by the way. By default, there has to be at least one administrator per site, and the administrator, under normal circumstances, can do anything on the site. The authenticated user, let's go back here. The authenticated user is automatically granted to any logged in user. So, and the order of these is important because, like, basically, this person here, this user role here, will be able to do everything that the authenticated user can do, and the authenticated user can do anything that the anonymous user can do. Okay, so there's an increasing level of sort of responsibility and access here as you go down. Administrator is like, you know, the big boss, and an anonymous user can't do all that much, or at least you have the ability to restrict what they can do. And authenticated user is somewhere in between usually. So, you know, and you might be thinking, well, what is an authenticated user? I mean, this, you know, we don't have to think solely in terms of, you know, contributors or writers or editors. We could think of this as simply as maybe these are just subscribers to your site. You know, maybe this is a membership-based site where you've got to pay a subscription fee to log into the site and read these premium articles or something. And so you could have a user role where people do need to log in order to just read. You know, the authenticated user doesn't have to be able to contribute things. You might just want to specify that the only authenticated users can read certain types of material, or maybe you want to identify certain materials being premium content. So you have a lot of fine-grained control over what permissions these different users have. The important thing here is that I wanted to show you over here, when you go to the People's tab over here, the People's menu, you see a list of all of your users, okay? And we can add new users, and we will go through doing that. If you want to have extra people working on your Drupal site, or if you just want to be able to give certain users specific permissions to do things. And I also wanted to show over here where the permissions are all listed. Again, we'll go back and we'll look at this. And most importantly, where we go here to create new roles, and how we can kind of go about editing what it is that these roles can do. So we'll come back and do this in a future screencast. But for now, that is kind of a real high level introduction to what user roles are according to Drupal, and how Drupal goes about classifying and managing what users and user roles can do. Okay, it's a very flexible system, and I think as you start using it, you'll realize why it's so flexible and so useful. Okay, so that's it for right now. I hope that that was helpful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.